Hello, hello, and welcome back for another adventure in the cookie jar. Today we are doing the 17th and final recipe from the Cream Puff Murder. They are Lois Brown's lemon cookies, as well as this little bit. So the first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 350. You're going to want half a cup of softened butter, 3/4 of a cup of white sugar, 1 egg beaten, 1 tablespoon lemon zest. It has a little note saying that lemon zest is the yellow part of the lemon peel finely grated. Be careful not to use the white part because that's bitter. If you decide you don't want these cookies tart, use only 1 teaspoon of lemon zest. 2 teaspoons of lemon juice, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 2/3 cups of flour, half a cup of milk, and then for a topping, you're going to want 1/4 cup of lemon juice and 3/4 cup white granulated sugar. There are, I believe, 2 to 3 notes on this recipe. The first one is, these cookies are wonderfully lemony and quite tart. You may want to sprinkle them with powdered sugar before you serve them to those who like them sweeter. The second note is, in the recipe, it says ungreased cookie sheets, but then it has the note to say that they use parchment paper because you can just slide the cookies onto wire racks and then they're already on the parchment paper for when you make up the, almost like a glaze topping. And finally, this recipe can be doubled. Essentially, you're mixing up the cookies, you're dropping them by teaspoons. You make these cookies small, about the size of a cherry. If you make them too large, they'll spread out on the cookie sheet and crumble when you remove them. The glaze, you're just going to heat up the juice, mix it into the sugar so that the sugar will dissolve, and then you're just going to brush that on the tops of the cookies. And that's pretty much it. Just mix, bake, and glaze. So let's get started. This is everything we will be using to make these cookies today. Okay, so the first thing we're doing is we're taking our butter and sugar, and we are going to beat them together. All right, next, the egg, as well as the lemon zest and the lemon juice. Next, we have the baking powder, the baking soda, and the salt. So we're going to want half of the flour and half of the milk. Get that in. Now we want the rest of the flour. And the rest of the milk. Okay, so I'm going to do this final mix around. It is kind of wet, so I'm going to take our tray and some parchment paper. And I heard recently a trick about parchment paper that you crumple it up to get it to lay flat, and I wanted to try that. I mean, it's not perfectly flat, but it's actually kind of stiff, so. We're going to try the smaller cookie scoop because the teaspoon was not, it didn't look very good. So we're just going to go with that and hope it's right. And it's interesting, the last batch of cookies made way too many, and this one's like, well, you can double it. So interesting. there is the first set. I'm just going to scoop up the rest and we'll see how many we get. So I finished scooping them up. There is exactly 4 dozen, and they will bake for about 12 to 14 minutes. So I was looking back over the book and I noticed that the glaze actually should be made while the first set is in the oven, because it says the hotter they are when you glaze them, the faster it will dry. So I have the heated lemon juice here, and we're just going to pour that into our sugar and give that all stirred up and nice and glazy. I'm not sure if you have to keep microwaving it to keep it melty, but you definitely have to keep stirring it between batches because it kind of separates a little bit. Okay, so we have the first batch out of the oven. They look just like that. We have our glaze right here. I'm just going to give it a quick stir again because it seems to be kind of separating a little bit. Alright, and I'm just going to take the brush, dip it in, and cover the top of the cookies. This does seem a lot of glaze compared to how many cookies we're going to get. But that's all there is. This set is done. I'm just going to let these sit here and dry, and I'll finish up. Here we are, glazed and baked. It did not make very much, so hence the talking about doubling it in the recipe. So I will say these are really cute. They did not take too long to put together. The glaze is still a little kind of wet, not much, but a little bit. Okay. This is probably the craziest thing I've ever said. But when I was baking them, they kind of smelled like cornbread. And now that I just took a bite of it, it tastes like a lemony cornbread. It's got the same color, the same texture. I used a tablespoon. I didn't do the teaspoons, I used a tablespoon of the zest, and I was a little like, ugh, it's gonna be too much. I don't think it is. Even using the full tablespoon of the zest, it is a very subtle lemon flavor. They are good, I will say that. They're a little odd because you think lemon cookie, it's gonna be super overpoweringly lemon, but it's very kind of subtle in the background. So, with that being said, next week, we will be moving on to plum pudding murder. The first recipe that we will be doing in this book is actually the second recipe, I believe, and they are called hot fudge sundae cakes. So if you're interested in seeing that, join us next week. I hope you all have a good one. Bye!